The floor gave a sound that did not belong to an empty house. It was not the creak of old wood or the sigh of a settling beam. It was a dull, living thump, small and trapped, and it came again from beneath the planks. Her breath broke loose from her chest before she could stop it. "There's something under here," she whispered, her voice shaking like a leaf caught in cold wind. The cabin fell silent except for the crackle of the low fire and the slow beat of her heart. Loud enough, she feared it might call danger to the door. The house stood alone on the edge of the timberline, where the tall pines leaned close, as if listening. It was a place built by hands that no longer lived to claim it, boards laid rough and true, nails dark with age. Outside, the late sun slipped low, sending narrow beams through the dust-filled air, lighting the room in bands of golden shadow. She knelt on the floor, fingers pressed flat to the wood, feeling again for that wrong sound, that hidden life. The smell of smoke and old sap clung to her clothes. Her knees trembled, but she did not rise. A mother learns when fear must be swallowed. Her name was Alara Crow, and the boy she sought was her blood and breath. Stone Crow had vanished at dawn when the fog still lay thick in the low ground. He was small for his years, but strong-willed, curious about places adults avoided. She had told him to stay close. She always did, yet the woods have ways of pulling children like water draws a stone, and the old cabin had been whispering secrets for weeks. Neighbors said it was empty. Empty places lie. Yalara pressed her ear to the floor. There it was again, softer now, like a hand striking wood from the wrong side. Panic rose sharp, but she forced it down. Stone was alive. That truth anchored her. She rose and backed away, calling out once, low and careful, her voice made steady by will alone. No answer came from the shadows beyond the doorway. She was not alone in this search, though she stood alone in the room. The man with her waited by the hearth, broad-shouldered and still, a presence that seemed to draw the light toward him. His name was Iron Wolf, a name earned rather than given. He had walked out of the western hills 2 nights earlier, carrying the marks of long travel and harder choices. His eyes were dark, watchful, shaped by open land and close fights. He had said little, but when he spoke, the words held. People said he was a warrior of the old ways, bound to the land by oath and loss. Lara had not asked for his story. She had only asked for help. Iron Wolf crossed the room in 3 long steps. He knelt where Alara had been, placing one palm flat on the floor. His brow tightened as he listened. Another sound came, a muffled cry now, weak but clear enough to cut through bone. The man's jaw set. He nodded once to Alara, a promise without words. He moved his hands to the seams between the planks, testing them like a hunter tests ice. Alara's thoughts raced back to the morning Stone was born. To the way he had clenched his fist around her finger, already stubborn, already refusing to let go. She remembered the promise she made then, that no darkness would take him while she still breathed. The memory burned in her chest as Iron Wolf rose and scanned the room, eyes measuring, mind working. The cabin had been used before, long ago, as a hideaway during bad seasons. There were stories of traps laid beneath floors, of spaces carved to hide food or people. She had heard them as a girl and laughed. Now she prayed they were true. Iron Wolf went to the wall and lifted a long iron bar from where it leaned among tools left behind. He tested its weight, then brought it back to the center of the room. He wedged the tip between 2 planks and leaned in, muscles bunching beneath worn leather and cloth. The wood groaned, old nails protesting their fate. Dust burst upward, stinging eyes and throats. Lara covered her mouth, fear and hope tangled so tight she could not tell them apart. With a sharp crack, the first plank tore free. Iron Wolf set it aside and drove the bar again. Another board split loose, then another. A hidden space beneath breathed out cold air that smelled of earth and damp straw. Alara dropped to her knees, calling Stone's name now, no longer caring who might hear. A small hand appeared through the gap, fingers shaking, reaching for light. Iron Wolf dropped the bar and ripped the boards away with his hands. He moved with a fierce care, strength guided by restraint. Beneath the floor lay a narrow pit lined with rough beams, a place meant to conceal. Stone crouched inside, eyes wide, face streaked with dirt and tears, his chest hitching with each breath. For a heartbeat, the world held still. Then Iron Wolf reached down and lifted the boy up, bringing him into the light like a gift wrested from the ground. Alara cried out and surged forward, taking Stone into her arms. She pressed her face into his hair, counting his breaths, whispering his name again and again. Stone clung to her neck, sobbing, words tumbling out about a loose board, about falling, about darkness and being stuck. She listened to every sound, every syllable, as if they were proof the world had not broken beyond repair. But relief did not last. Iron Wolf straightened slowly, his eyes already turning to the corners of the room, to the door, to the windows. His hand rested near the knife at his belt. He had seen things Alara had not, felt a wrongness that went deeper than a hidden pit. The boards beneath the floor were not old repairs. They were recent, cut and reset with care. Someone had used this place not long ago, and not kindly. Alara felt the shift in the air before she understood it. She pulled Stone closer, rising to her feet. The fire crackled louder, or perhaps her ears had sharpened. Outside, a branch snapped. Not the sound of a deer or a drifting limb, but the clean break of weight placed where it should not be. Iron Wolf lifted a finger, signaling silence. His gaze locked on the doorway, muscles coiling like a drawn bow. The sun dipped lower, the light thinning. Shadows crept inward, long and restless. Alara's heart hammered as she realized the truth settling heavy in her bones. The pit had not been an accident. The cabin was not empty. Someone had laid a trap, and Stone had fallen into it. The question that chilled her was simple and terrible. If Iron Wolf had not been there, if she had been minutes later, what would have happened when night came? A shape moved beyond the threshold, just out of clear sight. Iron Wolf shifted his stance, placing himself between Alara and the door. His voice was low when he spoke, steady as stone. "Hold the boy. Do not run, unless I say." Alara obeyed, clutching Stone as the last beam of sun slipped away. The floor lay torn open behind them, the secret exposed. Whatever waited outside now knew it had been found, and it was coming closer. Iron Wolf did not move when the shadow shifted outside the doorway. He stood like part of the cabin itself, planted and unyielding, one hand open and ready, the other close to his belt. Alara felt the steadiness of him more than she saw it. Stone's breathing was loud in her ears, quick and uneven. His small fingers locked into the back of her dress, as if she were the last solid thing in the world. The shape outside did not step in. It lingered, testing, as if listening the way Iron Wolf had listened to the floor. A faint scrape followed, boot leather against wood. Lyra's stomach tightened. Whoever it was knew the cabin, knew how sound carried here. She shifted her weight without meaning to, and Iron Wolf's eyes flicked toward her, sharp but calm, telling her without words to stay still. Minutes stretched thin. The fire snapped once, sending a spark up the chimney. Then the shape withdrew, leaving the doorway empty again. Alara released a breath she had not known she was holding, but Iron Wolf did not relax. He stepped closer to the door and nudged it shut with his foot, slow and quiet, until the latch settled into place with a soft click. "Who was that?" Alara whispered. "Someone patient," Iron Wolf said. His voice was low, roughened by travel and old smoke. "And patience is worse than anger." Stone stirred in her arms, lifting his head. "Mama," he said, his voice small. He was down there before. "I heard him walking." Alara's blood ran cold. She looked at Iron Wolf, fear breaking through her control at last. "He was not alone when he fell," she said. "Someone was here." Iron Wolf nodded once. He knelt in front of Stone, lowering his voice so it did not carry. "Did you see him, little one?" Stone swallowed. "No, I heard breathing and wood moving." Then it went quiet. Iron Wolf rose again, his expression darkening. "And we are not finished here." Alara backed toward the far wall, keeping Stone close. The cabin felt smaller now, its rough walls closing in. She had come here thinking she was chasing a child's mistake. Instead, she had walked into something shaped by intent. The key words of her fear were simple and heavy. Trap, hunter, bait. Iron Wolf moved through the room, checking the corners, lifting a loose blanket, peering behind stacked crates. Everything looked abandoned, but he read signs she could not. A scuff too fresh, a nail head newly driven. This place had been prepared. The pit under the floor had been lined with care, padded enough that a fall would not break bones. That thought sat wrong in Elaro's chest. Someone had wanted Stone alive. Why? She whispered, more to herself than to Iron Wolf. There are men who trade in fear, Iron Wolf said, and others who trade in children. Elara felt sick. Her past rose up unbidden. Memories of a world she thought she had escaped. She had crossed rivers and plains to keep Stone safe, leaving behind the town where his father had been killed over land papers and old grudges. She had learned early that the frontier was not empty, only thinly watched. If someone had followed her trail, if someone knew her name, then the cabin was only the beginning. Iron Wolf stopped near the torn floor. He crouched and studied the pit again, running his fingers along the beams. This was built by someone who knows wood, he said, and who expects return. Elara's heart pounded harder. Return from where? Iron Wolf did not answer right away. He stood and went to the small window at the back of the cabin, pushing aside the cloth that served as a curtain. Outside, dusk had settled into full evening. The trees stood black against a deepening sky. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. The sound should have been comforting. Tonight, it was not. From town, he said at last. Or from the road. Stone whimpered and buried his face in Elara's shoulder. Mind him gently, her mind racing. She had avoided towns for months, trading when she had to, keeping her head down. But avoidance was not invisibility. She thought of the man who had watched her too closely when she bought flour, the one who asked too many questions about her child. She had told herself she was imagining it. Iron Wolf turned back to her. We cannot stay. Elara nodded. She had already known that. Where do we go? There is a ravine west of here, he said. Hard to reach, harder to follow. We can hide there until morning. And Stone? She asked. He cannot walk far. Iron Wolf knelt again, meeting her eyes. I will carry him. Trust was a thing Elara had learned to give sparingly, but she felt no hesitation now. She adjusted her grip on Stone and let Iron Wolf take him, watching as the warrior lifted the boy with a gentleness that surprised her. Stone did not resist. He wrapped his arms around Iron Wolf's neck, instinct recognizing safety. They moved quietly, Iron Wolf opening the door just enough to slip through. Elara followed, heart hammering as the cold night air hit her face. The woods pressed close, branches clawing at the sky. Every sound seemed louder now, every shadow alive with threat. They had gone no more than 10 steps from the cabin when a voice cut through the dark. Leaving so soon? Elara froze. Iron Wolf stopped without turning, his body shifting subtly to shield Stone. The voice came from the trees, smooth and amused. A man stepped into view, lantern held high. The light caught his face, revealing a thin smile and eyes that did not smile back. His name, when he spoke it, sounded practiced. Black Reed. Elara's fear crystallized. She had heard the name before, whispered in places where people watched the door while they spoke. A man who moved children across borders. A man who built traps and waited. I told you the floor was weak, Black Reed went on. But boys never listen. Iron Wolf turned slowly, setting Stone down behind him without looking back. You chose the wrong child. Black Reed laughed softly. There is no wrong child, only valuable ones. Elara felt something snap inside her. He is my son, she said, her voice shaking but loud. You will not take him. Black Reed's gaze flicked to her, measuring. You should have stayed in the valley, Elara Crow. Her knees nearly buckled. You knew her name. Just do everything. Iron Wolf stepped forward, closing the distance by a pace. You will step back. Black Reed lifted his free hand, placating. No need for blood tonight. Not yet. I only came to see if the trap worked. And it did, Iron Wolf said. But not as you planned. The lantern light wavered as Black Reed tilted his head. Plans change. I have time. Elara's mind screamed that this was not the moment of escape or victory. This was the moment before everything broke loose. She tightened her grip on Stone's shoulder, feeling his fear mirror her own. From deeper in the woods came another sound. Footsteps. More than one. Black Reed smiled wider. Time. Iron Wolf did not look back at Elara, but his voice reached her, steady as before. When I move, you run. West. Do not stop. Her chest burned with the need to argue, to refuse, but she saw the truth in his stance. He was buying them seconds, maybe only moments. Iron Wolf shifted his weight, muscles coiling. The lantern flared as Black Reed raised it higher, trying to blind him. Shadows leaped across the trees. Somewhere close, a branch snapped again. Ilara took one last breath, knowing the night was about to decide everything. Iron Wolf moved like a storm held back by sheer will. He did not rush. He did not flinch. He simply shifted, one step to the side, placing his body between Black Reed's lantern and Ilara's face. The light splashed across his shoulder instead, turning the worn cloth there into a pale blaze. In that small motion, Ilara understood something that steadied her, even as fear rattled her bones. This man had faced worse than a lantern and a smile. Black Reed watched him with calm interest, as if studying a rival horse at auction. "You carry yourself like you think you can win," he said. Iron Wolf's voice stayed low. "I carry myself like I know what you are." A second figure stepped from the trees behind Black Reed, then a third, shapes with hats pulled low and long coats that hid their hands. Lara could not see what they carried, but she did not need to. Their spacing was wrong for travelers. It was the spacing of men who hunted together, each one placed to block a path, each one patient. The key words of the night sharpened in her mind: ambush, territory, control. Stone pressed against her leg, trembling. Lara crouched, gripping his shoulders. "Look at me," she whispered. His eyes found hers, wet and wide. "When I run, you run with me. You stay close. You do not look back." Stone nodded once, though his lips quivered. Iron Wolf did not wait for Black Reed to give orders. He raised one hand slightly, palm open toward Ilara, a quiet signal to hold for one breath more. Then he turned his head just enough to speak without drawing Black Reed's notice. "West," he murmured. "Follow the creek line. It will hide your track." Ilara's throat tightened. She wanted to ask how he knew that creek. She wanted to ask why he was here at all. But there was no time for questions that belonged to daylight. Black Reed's lantern swung gently as he took a slow step forward. "Ilara Crow," he said again, savoring her name. "You did not think you could vanish. Not with a child that age. People notice. People talk." Ilara's mind flashed to the trading post. To the old woman who had asked where she was headed. To the boy who had stared at Stone too long. What? The frontier was a web of whispers. She had been walking through it like a fly, thinking she was unseen. Black Reed continued, voice soft as oil. "You owe a debt. Your husband's debt. Land paper debts. Blood debts. There are men who do not forget." Iron Wolf's eyes narrowed. Lara felt the old wound open inside her. Her husband, Flint Crow, had died on a dry stretch of road with the sun in his eyes and a lie in his ear. They said it was a dispute over a boundary line. Lara had known better. Flint had found something in those papers, something that frightened the wrong men. He had tried to hide it, and then he was gone. Since then, every mile Ilara traveled carried the weight of that truth. "You are not here for debts," Iron Wolf said. "You are here because you think her fear belongs to you." Black Reed's smile did not fade, but his eyes hardened. "Fear belongs to whoever can hold it." The men behind him shifted. One of them coughed, a rough sound, impatient. Another stepped sideways, trying to widen the circle. Lara's hands tightened around Stone. She looked at Iron Wolf's back, broad and steady, and she saw the narrow path between the trees to the west, dark and uncertain. Running meant trusting the night to hide them. Staying meant letting Black Reed's patience close like a noose. Iron Wolf moved first. He kicked a patch of loose dirt toward the lantern, a quick sweep that sent dust into the air. The lantern flame flickered, the light stuttering. In that heartbeat of dimness, Iron Wolf lunged not toward Black Reed's chest, but toward the lantern itself. His hand snapped out and struck it hard. The lantern flew sideways, crashing into the grass, the glass shattering. The flame flared bright, then dropped low, throwing wild shadows. Black Reed cursed and stumbled back, throwing his arm up. Iron Wolf turned in the same motion, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Ow." Ilara ran. She grabbed Stone's hand and pulled him hard, sprinting west into the trees. Branches slapped her face, roots caught at her boots. Stone's small feet stumbled, but kept moving, driven by her grip and her desperate breath. Behind them, voices rose, sharp and angry. The crack of a boot on wood, the snap of brush. Men moving fast, Ilara's lungs burned. The creek line Iron Wolf spoke of was not visible yet, but she heard water somewhere ahead. A faint rush, like a promise. She pushed Stone onward, whispering his name like a prayer. Stone cried once, a small sound, then bit it back, eyes fixed forward. Ilara felt pride stab through her fear. Her boy was not weak. He was frightened, yes, but he was alive, and he was learning what kind of world they were in. They reached the creek and followed it, feet splashing through shallow water. Ilara forced herself to stay close to the bank, where the stones would take their scent and the water would blur their tracks. The moon hid behind clouds, leaving only faint light through the trees. It felt like running through a dream made of cold and shadow. A shout came behind them. This way, Ilara's stomach dropped. They had been seen. She pulled Stone into thicker brush and crouched, pressing him low. The creek murmured beside them. Her heart hammered so hard she feared it would speak for her. She covered Stone's mouth gently with her palm, not to silence him from fear, but to stop any gasp from escaping. Footsteps approached, splashing through water. A lantern glow flickered through the trees, weaker than before, but enough to cast a moving light. Ilara held her breath. Stone's eyes stared up at her, wide as a fawn's. A man passed close, so near she could smell tobacco and wet wool. He paused, scanning lantern held out. Ilara felt his gaze sweep over the brush, felt the moment stretch. If he stepped 1 foot closer, he would see them. Then, from behind, another shout. "Reed wants you back. Wolf is still in the yard." The man cursed and turned away, hurried footsteps splashing as he left. The lantern glow vanished. Ilara's breath came out in a silent sob. Stone trembled. Ilara leaned her forehead to his and whispered, "We keep moving." They moved again, following the creek, until the water narrowed and dipped into a stony bend. Ilara's thoughts raced, trying to hold on to what mattered. Iron Wolf. He was still back there. He had stayed between them and the men. She did not know if he was alive. She did not know if Black Reed would let him be. As they climbed from the creek into higher ground, Ilara saw something ahead that made her stop. A small bundle tied to a branch with a strip of cloth. It fluttered in the night air, pale against the dark. She reached it cautiously. The cloth was knotted in a simple pattern, one she had seen once before on Iron Wolf's wrist when he adjusted his sleeve. A signal. Her chest tightened. He had known these woods. He had marked a path. Stone tugged her sleeve. "Mama, what is it?" "A sign," she whispered. "A sign that we are not alone." They followed the markers, each one tied where the trees bent, where the path forked, where the ground dropped into a narrow ravine. The air grew colder as they descended, the sound of their footsteps muffled by damp earth and moss. The ravine opened into a sheltered pocket, hidden by boulders and thick brush. There, tucked under an overhang, was a small camp that looked abandoned, but not forgotten. A bedroll, a cold fire ring, a tin cup. Ilara's mind spun. Iron Wolf had been here before, maybe for days, maybe longer. He had not arrived by accident. Stone sank to the ground, exhausted. Ilara knelt beside him, brushing dirt from his face, checking his arms and legs for scrapes. He winced, but did not cry. His eyes kept darting toward the dark mouth of the ravine, as if expecting it to spit out Black Reed at any moment. "Ilara Crow," a voice said softly behind them. Ilara whirled, nearly falling back. Her hand flew to the small knife at her belt, more comfort than weapon. A woman stepped from the shadows of the overhang. She was not young, not old, with hair braided tight and eyes sharp as flint. She held her hands open to show she carried nothing. "My name is Cedar Vale," the woman said. "An Iron Wolf told me if you came, you would come fast and afraid." Ilara stared, breathing hard. "Where is he?" Cedar Vale's gaze flickered toward the ravine entrance. Holding them, she said, "Longer than he should have to." Stone looked up, hope and fear tangled in his face. "Is he hurt?" Cedar Vale's jaw tightened. "He does not fall easy. But Black Reed does not give up easy either." Ilara's knees shook. "Why are you helping us?" Cedar Vale's eyes softened just a fraction. "'Cause that man you buried, Flint Crow, once helped my brother when no one else would. Because debts can be paid in good ways, too. And because Black Reed has been circling this land like a vulture, taking what he wants. Tonight, he found a harder meal." Alara's head swam. Flint's past debts and favors, all of it reaching forward into this night. She had run thinking she left those ties behind. She had only dragged them into new dirt. From far off, faint but clear, came a sound that froze Alara's blood. A low call, then another, men signaling across distance. The woods were alive with pursuit. Cedarvale crouched beside Alara and Stone. "Listen to me," she said. "We cannot stay here long. Out. Reed knows these ravines too. He knows every hiding place worth knowing. Iron Wolf led you here because it is safer than open ground, not because it is safe." Alara swallowed. "Then where?" Cedarvale's eyes lifted to the darkness above the ravine where the cliffs rose like teeth. "There is a trail," she said, "old and narrow. Leads to a ridge where the wind eats scent. But you must climb. You must climb quiet." Stone's small hand found Alara's, "Mama," he whispered. "I am scared." Alara squeezed his hand, forcing her voice steady. "No," she said. "But we are still together." Cedarvale stood and listened, head tilted. "They are moving closer," she said. "And when Iron Wolf breaks away, Reed will chase twice as hard. He will not want to lose what he thinks is his." Alara's throat tightened at the thought of Iron Wolf alone in the yard, shadows and men around him. She pictured his back, steady in the firelight. She pictured his eyes, dark and unafraid. She did not know him, not truly, yet she felt bound to him by the simple fact that he had lifted her son from the dark. A sudden distant crack echoed through the trees, not thunder, not storm, but something sharp and final enough to make Stone flinch. Cedarvale's face hardened. "That will be Reed's signal," she said. "He is done waiting. He's moving." Alara rose, pulling Stone up with her. Her legs felt weak, but her will held. "Dot." She looked once more toward the ravine entrance, toward the dark path back to the cabin, and she whispered a name she had no right to speak like prayer. Iron Wolf. Then Cedarvale led them toward the narrow trail climbing into the cliff shadows. While behind them the woods carried the sound of pursuit, and the night tightened like a rope that had not yet found its knot. The climb began where the ravine narrowed into stone and shadow. Cedarvale moved first, sure-footed and silent, her hands finding holds where Alara saw only darkness. Alara followed with Stone pressed close to her side, one arm around his back, the other gripping the rock until her fingers burned. Every scrape of leather against stone sounded too loud. Every breath felt like a shout in the still night. Above them, the wind whispered through cracks in the cliff, carrying the smell of pine and cold earth. Below, somewhere far too close, voices echoed through the ravine. Black Reed's men were spreading out now, methodical, confident. They were no longer searching wildly. They were closing in. Stone slipped once, a small cry tearing free before Alara could stop it. Cedarvale froze, turning back sharply. Alara pulled Stone tight, pressing his face into her shoulder, whispering his name over and over until his shaking eased. The voices below paused. A lantern flared. Alara felt the moment stretch thin as glass. Then Cedarvale lifted a small stone and tossed it far to the left, letting it clatter down the ravine wall. The sound echoed sharply. Below, a voice cursed, and footsteps rushed toward the noise. The lantern light moved away. They climbed again. Alara's thoughts drifted despite the fear, pulled by memory and guilt. She thought of the first night after Flint died, how the house felt too quiet, how Stone had cried until his voice gave out. She thought of the papers Flint had hidden beneath a loose floorboard, the ones he had sworn would keep them safe someday. She had burned them, one by one, watching the ink curl and blacken, believing she was cutting the last thread tying them to danger. Now she wondered if the danger had only grown more patient. At last the trail leveled out onto a narrow ledge. The land dropped away sharply on one side, a long fall swallowed by darkness. On the other side, the cliff rose steep and cold. Cedarvale crouched low and signaled them to stop. She peered ahead, listening. The ridge lay just beyond, she had said. The place where wind stole scent and sound. But between here and there stretched open ground, dotted with low brush and broken stone. Crossing it would mean exposure. Alara's heart hammered at the thought. Below them, the ravine came alive with movement. Lanterns bobbed like angry fireflies. Black Reed's voice carried clearly now, calm and commanding. He was directing them, placing them. He knew the ravine. He knew the old paths. Cedar Vale had been right. There was no hiding from a man like that for long. Lara, Cedar Vale whispered. When we move fast. No stopping, no looking back. Ilara nodded, though fear knotted her stomach. That Stone clutched her hands so tightly his knuckles went white. They moved. The open ground felt endless. Every step seemed to echo. The wind picked up, tugging at Ilara's dress, carrying her scent outward. She prayed the cliff wind would scatter it, prayed it would confuse the hounds of men who followed. A shout rose behind them. A lantern flared brighter. They had been seen. Run. Cedar Vale hissed. They ran. Stone stumbled, nearly falling. Lara scooped him up without slowing, her legs screaming in protest. The ridge loomed ahead, a dark rise against a starless sky. The wind howled louder there, tearing at hair and clothes, whistling through scrub and stone. An arrow thudded into the ground behind them, close enough that Ilara felt the vibration through her bones. She did not know who had fired it. She did not look. They reached the ridge just as more voices erupted behind them. Cedar Vale dove behind a boulder, dragging Ilara and Stone down with her. They pressed themselves into the cold rock, breath ragged, hearts pounding. The wind roared over the ridge, relentless. It stole words from mouths and carried them away. Below, Black Reed stepped into view, his coat snapping in the gusts. He lifted his lantern high, scanning the ridge with narrowed eyes. They are here, he said, his voice strained by the wind but certain, spread out. Men climbed up from the ravine, fanning across the slope. Lantern light danced wildly, shadows leaping and merging. Ilara felt trapped between stone and sky. Cedar Vale leaned close to Ilara's ear. There is a split in the ridge, she said. A narrow pass. If we reach it, they will have to come single file. And if we do not, Ilara whispered. Cedar Vale's mouth set hard. Then we fight. Ilara's mind raced. Fight. She was no warrior. She had a knife. Little more than a tool. Stone trembled against her chest. She thought of Iron Wolf again, of the way he had stood between them and Black Reed without hesitation. Where was he now? Had he broken free? Or was he lying hurt in the yard of the cabin? The fire burned low around him. As if summoned by her thoughts, a sound rose from the far side of the ridge, sharp cry, not of pain, but of challenge. It cut through the wind like a blade. Cedar Vale's eyes widened. That is him, she breathed. Iron Wolf. Ilara's chest tightened with a mix of hope and terror. Iron Wolf appeared over the ridgeline, silhouetted against the dark sky, moving fast despite the climb. One arm hung stiffly at his side, but his stride did not falter. He reached the ridge and turned to face the men below, planting himself like a barrier between them and Ilara. Black Reed's lantern light found him. Smile returned to Reed's face, thin and sharp. You are hard to kill, he called. Iron Wolf did not answer. He scanned the ridge, his eyes finding Ilara and Stone crouched behind the boulder. His gaze held hers for a heartbeat. In that look, Ilara read apology and resolve, and something else she had not expected. Trust. He turned back to Black Reed, lifting his chin. It ends tonight, he said. Black Reed laughed, the sound torn by the wind. Everything ends, but not the way you think. The men closed in, forming a loose half-circle. The wind howled louder, masking footsteps, hiding movement. Ilara realized with a sick jolt that the wind which hid scent also hid sound. Anything could happen here, unseen and unheard. Cedar Vale gripped Ilara's arm. The pass, she whispered. Now, Iron Wolf moved at the same time, stepping forward, drawing the men's focus. He shouted something Ilara could not hear, a challenge or a curse, it did not matter. It pulled them toward him like iron to a blade. Ilara rose, lifting Stone again, and ran for the split in the ridge. Cedar Vale stayed close, glancing back, her jaw tight. Lantern light swung wildly as men shifted direction, some following Iron Wolf, others breaking away toward Ilara. The pass was narrower than Ilara had imagined. Barely wide enough for one person at a time, walls of stone pressing close on either side. She slipped through, scraping her arm, ignoring the sting. Stone clung to her neck, eyes squeezed shut. On the other side, the ground dropped into a shallow basin filled with scrub and fallen rock. It was not safety, but it was space. Behind them, a shout rang out as a man tried to force the pass too quickly and stumbled. Another cursed, the bottleneck held, buying seconds. Then a new sound cut through everything. A deep horn call from below, long and mournful. Alara froze. Cedar Vale swore softly. "That is Reed's signal," Cedar Vale said. "He has more men." Alara's hope faltered. Black Reed had planned for this. He always did. From the basin ahead came movement. Shadows detached themselves from rock and brush. Figures rose, blocking the far side. Alara's heart sank. They were being herded, driven from both sides toward a place with no escape. Stone lifted his head, sensing the shift. "Mama," he whispered, "I am tired." Alara swallowed hard. "Just a little more," she said, though she did not know if it was true. Behind them, the clash of bodies echoed faintly. The sound of struggle carried on the wind. Iron Wolf was fighting, holding the ridge as long as he could. Each second he held was a gift paid for in blood and breath. Black Reed's voice rose again, closer now, sharper. "You cannot outrun the land," he called. "It belongs to those who know it." Alara felt something steady inside her, something she had not known she carried. "The land does not belong to you," she whispered. It never did. The basin narrowed toward a stand of twisted trees. Cedar Vale slowed, scanning, searching for another way through. Alara's legs trembled, her arms aching from the weight of stone and fear. Lanterns flared behind them. Shadows closed in ahead. The night pressed tight on all sides. Then from the trees ahead a low whistle sounded, brief and sharp. Cedar Vale stopped dead. Another whistle answered, closer than another. Cedar Vale's eyes lit with fierce hope. "Friends," she breathed, "or enemies of Reed." Alara did not know which was worse. She only knew that everything was about to break open one way or another. Behind them, Iron Wolf's voice rose in a final, powerful shout, raw and defiant, carried by the wind across stone and shadow. Alara held Stone tighter as the basin filled with movement and sound. The ridge alive with pursuit, the night drawing them all toward a moment that could not be delayed any longer. The whistles from the trees were answered by movement, quick and sure. Figures stepped out of the shadows, not rushing, not shouting, but placing themselves with quiet purpose. They were men and women shaped by the land, faces weathered, eyes alert. Cedar Vale straightened, relief and resolve crossing her face at once. These were people she trusted, people who had learned the hard way that the frontier demanded unity when darkness gathered. Black Reed's lantern light swept the basin, catching the newcomers. His smile faltered for the first time that night. He raised his hand, signaling his men to hold, reassessing the ground he thought he owned. The wind tugged at his coat, snapping it like a flag that no longer flew steady. Iron Wolf emerged from the ridge behind them, breath heavy, one arm stained dark where cloth had torn. He did not stumble. He came forward with the last of his strength, eyes never leaving black red. The sight of him standing there, unbroken, drew a low murmur from the people in the trees. They knew him. Alara saw it in the way they shifted to give him space. Cedar Vale moved to Iron Wolf's side. "You held long enough," she said. Iron Wolf nodded once. "Long enough." Black Reed's voice cut through the wind, sharper now. "This does not end how you think," he said. "You are outnumbered." A woman stepped forward from the trees, her hair bound tight, a rifle steady in her hands. Her name was Ash Hollow, and her gaze never wavered. "You count wrong," she said. "You stand on ground that remembers." The basin filled with quiet certainty. Black Reed looked from face to face, seeing not fear but refusal. He had hunted alone before, relying on shadows and patience. Tonight, the shadows did not belong to him. Iron Wolf took a step forward. "Leave," he said. "Take your men and go." Black Reed laughed, but the sound rang hollow. "You think this ends a debt?" "It ends tonight," Iron Wolf replied. "That is enough." For a long moment, no one moved. The wind roared, carrying the smell of pine and stone. Alara held Stone close, her heart pounding, her eyes fixed on the thin man with the lantern. She thought of all the miles she had run, all the nights she had slept light, listening for footsteps. She was done running. Black Reed's gaze slid to Stone, then back to Alara. Something unreadable crossed his face. He lifted the lantern slightly, then lowered it. "This land will not forget you," he said. Elara met his eyes. "Neither will we." Blackreed turned away first. He gave a sharp signal, and his men fell back, melting into the ravine and the trees beyond. Lantern lights dwindled, then vanished. The night slowly loosened its grip. When the last sound of pursuit faded, Elara sank to her knees, the strength leaving her all at once. Stone clung to her, then pulled back, his eyes searching the faces around them. "Is it over?" he asked. Iron Wolf knelt in front of him, level and calm. "For tonight," he said, "and for you." Stone studied him, then smiled, small and tired. He reached out and touched Iron Wolf's sleeve. "You are brave," he said. Iron Wolf's expression softened in a way Elara had not seen before. "So are you." The people of the basin moved then, checking wounds, sharing water, murmuring quiet words. Cedar Vale pressed a cloth to Iron Wolf's arm, tying it tight. He winced, but did not pull away. Lara watched, a weight lifting from her chest as she realized they were safe enough to breathe. They made camp before dawn, hidden and secure. Small fire burned low, shielded by stone. Ash Hollow shared bread and dried meat. Elara ate without tasting, her hands still shaking, but the simple act grounded her. Stone fell asleep against her side, exhaustion finally claiming him. As the sky lightened, Iron Wolf sat across from Elara, the fire's glow catching the lines of his face. "Blackreed will not trouble you again," he said. "Not here. Not anywhere near." Elara studied him. "How can you be sure?" "Because the land turned on him," he replied. "Because people spoke. Men like him depend on silence." Cedar Vale joined them, her eyes on the waking sky. "There are towns beyond the ridge," she said. "Good ones. Places where a woman and child can settle without looking over their shoulder." Elara nodded slowly. "I thought running was the only way." "It is not," Cedar Vale said. "Not when you choose where to stand." Elara looked down at Stone, his face peaceful in sleep. She thought of Flint, of the choices he made and the cost he paid. She had believed burning the papers would end it. Now she understood. It was not paper that bound them, it was fear. Fear could be faced. When the sun rose fully, painting the basin in soft gold, Iron Wolf stood. "I will walk you as far as the valley road," he said. Elara rose with him. "You are hurt. I have been worse," he said, "and I owe you nothing." She shook her head. "You owe us nothing. We owe you our lives." Iron Wolf met her gaze, something steady and quiet passing between them. "Then we are even." They broke camp and moved out together, the path easier by daylight. The woods no longer felt like a trap, but a passage. Birds called. The creek whispered. The world went on. By midday, they reached the valley road, wide and open, leading toward a cluster of farms and fields. Smoke curled from chimneys in the distance, life ordinary and strong. Iron Wolf stopped there. "This is as far as I go," he said. Stone woke and slid down from Elara's arms. He walked up to Iron Wolf, standing straight despite his small size. "Will you come back?" he asked. Iron Wolf knelt again. "The land needs me," he said, "and if you call." Stone nodded solemnly, as if sealing a pact. Elara stepped forward. "You saved my son," she said. "You saved me." Iron Wolf rose, the hint of a smile touching his mouth. "You saved yourselves. I only stood where I was needed." They stood in the road for a moment longer, the past behind them, the future open. Then Iron Wolf turned and walked back toward the ridge, his figure growing smaller until the land folded him away. Elara took Stone's hand and started down the road. With each step, the tightness in her chest eased. She felt the weight of the night lift, replaced by a quiet strength she had not known she carried. They found a place by evening, a small farm at the edge of the valley where the owner listened and nodded and offered work and shelter. Elara watched Stone run through tall grass, laughing, the sound free and bright. She breathed deep, letting the moment settle. That night, as stars filled the sky, Elara sat on the porch and thought of the cabin, the hidden pit, the darkness under the floor. She thought of how fear had tried to take her child and how courage had torn the planks apart. The frontier was still wild. Danger still walked its roads. But so did people willing to stand. She went inside and kissed Stone's brow as he slept. "We are home," she whispered, not to the walls or the land, but to the promise she carried forward. And in the quiet that followed, with the valley safe around them and the night finally still, Alar Crow knew that what had been pulled from the dark was more than her son. It was their future, lifted into the light by hands that did not let go.